Before I knew Jesus, I was very insecure, painfully shy, unlovable, I thought, and unaccepted, and rejected for the most part. And through the decisions and actions of people who were supposed to love me and take care of me as a child, I carried guilt and immense shame that wasn't mine to bear. As a result of that, I spent most of my young adulthood, teenage years through young adult life, searching for acceptance, searching for somebody who would love me, just something that would make me feel worthy. I ended up married to a man who was mentally, verbally, spiritually, and physically abusive. And one night, after what I call an episode of abuse, I was just crying out, and I didn't know where to turn, I didn't know what to do. And I was reminded of this billboard I saw in South Texas, and it said, "Jesus heals the brokenhearted." I was like, if anyone's brokenhearted, it's me. And it was a billboard for a church that met at Clear Lake High School in their gym. So the next morning I got up, went there, and I can't tell you what was taught that day, but I can tell you that I sat there in tears the whole time, and my plan was to get up and run out as soon as the service was over, because I didn't want one of those church people talking to me. I didn't have the strength, and now I know God didn't want me to get up and run out, because this lady came over, she put her arm around me and just held me as I cried. She asked me if there was something I needed or what was wrong, and I just told her, I'm brokenhearted. And so over the next hour, she proceeded to explain to me how we're all sinners and how Jesus sacrificed his life on a cross so that we could be healed and that those sins could be forgiven. It was an unexplainable, supernatural experience. I went home to tell my husband about it, and he said, you can't go back there because I know what happened and you're going to change now. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but okay. And so we ended up moving shortly after that to East Texas, where I did get involved in a local community. I grew in my understanding of God, spending time in the Word. I got a Bible. I had never had one before. But I still didn't understand this loving God who wants the best for me when my life was such a disaster. We spent 7 years there. We had 4 kids. And I tried to hide from my friends what life was really like. And that just added to the shame and the insecurities. Till one night, after another episode, a friend of mine came over because she couldn't reach me by phone, and she saw the torn clothes. She saw the complete mess that we were in. She arranged for the kids and I the next day to be dropped off in a random parking lot, I thought, with a woman who would take us to a battered women's shelter that would end us up in a shelter in Austin where my family lived. So we spent 90 days in a battered women's shelter. And it was there that I first really felt God's presence in my life. I had an unexplainable peace through very difficult times and having to make decisions and take action to make a life for my kids and I. And most of all, I was able to hold my kids and hug them, and where that touch that was associated with so-called love was so painful, it started to heal during that time. I'd love to say that all that made my life great and I didn't make any more bad choices, but that's not true. I spent the next several years, probably 5, trying to solve things on my own, trying to find a better way for myself and my kids, and not really letting go and letting God help us. That resulted in several failed relationships, and finally got to the point where what I was doing wasn't working, and I was finally willing to admit that to myself. I found a counselor. She helped me identify the things that caused the hurt, that led to the insecurities, to where I couldn't even speak to people. I couldn't speak at work with people around. It was debilitating. So then the hard part was I had to work through those, and then she said that big F word that I had to forgive. And that was a struggle. But quite honestly, Don sat with me through each of those pains, and he is the first time that I ever saw true, sacrificial, unconditional love. Through ugly, ugly tears, he would remind me of how beautiful I was, how accepted I was, and the Jesus in him just poured out love on me that I'd been looking for so long, to the point I was able to trust that God could provide that love for me. Because Don eventually, everybody lets us down, but I was able to forgive others. I was able to forgive myself. And I'm still working through the journey, getting to know God better, to live my life totally for Him. But I do believe that after that forgiveness, that was 20 years ago almost, that I let that burden go, and my life changed in ways that I wouldn't have imagined, mainly internal, because prior to that, every thought and every action was, how am I going to make things better for myself? How am I going to feel better? What am I going to do to make this work? And that focus has shifted to, what can I do for others? How can I show others what Jesus has done for me? And I can talk to anybody now if they'll stand still long enough for me to make eye contact.